My name's Adam, and I'm 23 years old. I wasn't supposed to be here. At least, not according to my parents. If you told 18-year-old me that one day I'd be wearing a suit tailored to my measurements, sitting behind a desk with my nameplate on the glass door, I probably would have laughed. Not because I didn't believe in myself, but because back then, no one else did. Especially not my parents. It started the day I opened that acceptance letter. I remember the exact shade of the envelope. Navy blue, embossed with the university seal in gold. I'd been waiting for weeks. I barely breathed as I tore it open at the kitchen table, heart pounding, hands shaking. And there it was, "Congratulations, Adam." The rest blurred out as my eyes filled with tears. I'd gotten into Ridgewell University. My dream school. Full ride, almost. Almost. I turned to my parents, still in their pajamas, watching one of those loud morning shows on TV. I held out the letter like it was the most sacred thing I'd ever touched. "Look," I said, smiling. I got in. My mom glanced at it like it was a grocery receipt. My dad didn't even look up. "You're not special, Adam," my dad muttered, flipping the channel. "Everyone gets into college these days." I stood there, stunned. I expected maybe a hug. "Oh, we're proud of you?" Even just a nod. But my mom just sighed. "Well, we're not wasting money on that," she added. "It's not like you're gonna finish. Nobody from this family ever does." That was the first crack. And once it formed, the rest came fast. They refused to fill out the FAFSA. Wouldn't even give me the tax info. Said if I wanted to play big shot and go off to some fancy school, I could figure it out on my own. I tried explaining it wasn't a fancy school. I tried explaining the scholarships. I tried explaining how close I was. Just needed help with room and board, or even just a signature. They didn't care. "You think you're better than us?" my dad asked one night, as I sat at the kitchen table trying to make the numbers work. "You're not. You've always had your head in the clouds, acting like you're some genius. Maybe it's time you learn how the real world works." That was the same night I noticed a box on my bed. My room, already more like a storage closet than a bedroom, had been stripped down. My desk was gone. My clothes were folded in neat piles on the floor. I thought maybe they were doing renovations. Then I saw the garbage bags, lined up by the door. I stood there in silence until my dad walked in, holding a beer. He didn't even blink. "Figure it out, genius." That was it. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just walked out the front door and took a photo of the bags on the lawn, the cardboard box with my name scribbled on the side, and the cracked porch I'd grown up sitting on. I posted it nowhere. Showed it to no one. But I saved it. Deep in my phone, buried in a folder I labeled Reason. I crashed at my friend's basement for a while. Slept on a mattress that deflated every night. Got a job delivering groceries at night and mopping floors in the morning. Ate cheap takeout and pretended the noodles were homemade. Took out loans I didn't understand just to cover the rest. Studied on the bus. Failed a couple classes. Picked myself back up. Slowly, I clawed my way forward, inch by painful inch. And through it all, the late nights, the skipped meals, the self-doubt, I never heard from them. Not a text. Not a "how are you?" Not a single acknowledgement that I existed. Until last Tuesday. 5 years had passed. I had graduated early, somehow. Got into a tech startup during a wild hiring spree. Moved up fast. Too fast. Imposter syndrome was a daily companion, but I faked it until I didn't have to. And then came the offer to lead a new branch in the city, corner office, decent team, 6-figure salary. It didn't feel real until I walked in and saw my name on the wall. Adam Wexler, Regional Director. Tuesday started like any other. Emails. Meetings. Coffee that tasted slightly burnt. I was halfway through a call with a vendor when my receptionist buzzed in. "There's, a couple here to see you. They say they're your parents." I didn't move for a second. I just stared at the phone like it had said something in a foreign language. "Should I send them up?" she asked. I almost said no, but curiosity won. They walked in like they owned the place. My mom in a gaudy leopard print coat. My dad in the same jacket he wore the night he kicked me out. His hair was grayer. Hers was stiff with too much hairspray. They looked older. Smaller. "Adam," my mom said brightly, like we were old friends. "You look so grown up." I said nothing. They sat down before I invited them to. My dad scanned the room like he was inspecting property. "Not bad," he said. "You must be doing well." Still, I said nothing. Then came the reason they were there. Of course there was a reason. My parents never made a move unless it benefited them. "Well," my mom started, with a practiced sigh, "things have been tight lately. The house needs some work. And with the mortgage, we just thought, maybe you could help out a bit. We gave you a roof for 18 years, my dad added. It's only fair you give back." I didn't flinch. I didn't yell. I just opened the drawer, pulled out my phone, tapped a few times, and turned the screen toward them. The photo. My clothes. On the lawn. The trash bags. The broken porch. Their faces changed instantly. My mom's smile disappeared like someone had flipped a switch. My dad leaned back in his chair, jaw tight. You kept that? He asked, his voice low. I didn't answer. They sat in silence for a few seconds, the weight of that photo hanging in the air like smoke. And then my mom did what she always did when things stopped going her way. She pivoted. Fast. Oh, come on, Adam, she said, forcing a shaky laugh. That was years ago. We were just trying to teach you responsibility. You needed to grow up, and clearly you did. We did the right thing, didn't we? My dad stayed quiet, but his eyes were locked on me. Watching. Measuring. I leaned back slowly in my chair, phone still face up on the table between us. I took my time, not to be dramatic, but because I wanted to study their faces. I wanted to see if there was even a flicker of guilt, regret, shame. But all I saw was discomfort and calculation. They weren't sorry. Not for what they did. Not for how they did it. They were only sorry that now, they needed me. For a moment, I let the silence stretch. Let it sink in. I thought of those nights I fell asleep hungry because I couldn't afford dinner and bus fare. I thought of the rejection letters for internships because I had no connections. I thought of the way I used to walk past nice restaurants and imagine what it felt like to sit inside without worrying about the bill. I thought of the time my shoe fell apart during finals week, and I had to duct tape it together and pretend it was a style choice. And all that time, while I was scraping by, they were sitting comfortably in that house, watching game shows, hosting barbecue nights with the neighbors, not once wondering where their only son had disappeared to. You didn't teach me anything, I finally said, my voice calm but razor sharp. You abandoned me. You laughed when I got in. You threw my life on the lawn and told me to figure it out. My mom opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. No, you don't get to spin this. I reached into the other drawer, the locked one, and pulled out a slim black folder. Inside were a few neatly organized documents. I slid one across the desk toward them. This is the list of scholarships and grants I earned. Every one of them. I want you to see what it looks like when someone believes in themselves. Another paper. I slid it over. This is the loan I had to take because you refused to fill out a single form. I'm still paying it off. A third sheet, my diploma. Honors. Dual major. And this, I said, pulling out one last thing. The deed to a property I had just closed on 2 weeks prior. This is mine. Paid for without a single cent from you. Their faces were blank now. Not angry. Not defensive. Just stunned. Like they were looking at a stranger. My dad finally spoke, his voice quiet. So you're really not going to help? I met his eyes. No. He blinked. My mom's lip curled like she wanted to cry. Or scream. We're family, Adam, she said. I took a deep breath. I could feel my heart thudding, slow and heavy, but I didn't waver. No, I said. We're relatives. There's a difference. I stood up, signaling the meeting was over. Security will walk you out. That part was a bluff. I didn't need security. They weren't going to make a scene. Not here. Not when their image still mattered. I walked to the door and opened it. They stood, slowly, like their legs had aged 5 years in 5 minutes. My dad looked at me one last time. You'll regret this, he muttered. I didn't answer. They left. I stood there for a while, staring at the hallway where they'd disappeared. The receptionist gave me a look as I returned to my desk, the kind that asked a dozen questions at once. I just shook my head. The weight didn't lift immediately. I sat back down, stared at my screensaver. That photo's still on my phone. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was still chasing something. I'd finally stopped running, and they were the ones who had to catch up. What I didn't know at that moment, though, what I couldn't have known, was that this wasn't over. Not even close. Because 3 days later, I got a call from a lawyer. And apparently, my parents had one last trick up their sleeve. The call came on a Friday afternoon, just as I was packing up to leave for the weekend. I remember the sky outside was turning that kind of soft orange that makes the city almost look peaceful. I had plans, nothing extravagant, just a quiet dinner with some friends, and maybe a late movie. For once, my life felt steady, predictable, like the storm had passed. Then my phone buzzed. Hello, is this Mr. Adam Wexler? Yes. Who's this? This is Michael Grant, legal counsel for James and Patricia Wexler. I froze. Even hearing their names like that, formal, cold, wrapped in legal tone, made my stomach twist. I hadn't spoken those names out loud in years. I let out a slow breath and leaned back in my chair. What's this about? I asked, already bracing for whatever nonsense was about to come next. There's been a situation regarding the family home, he said. Your parents have recently filed a claim that your name was intended to be on the property deed as co-owner. I blinked. What? They're claiming it was a clerical error during the refinancing years ago. That you were always supposed to have shared ownership, which would make you partially responsible for the current mortgage. I laughed. Out loud. It wasn't a pleasant laugh. It was sharp and dry and bitter. They threw me out, I said slowly, trying not to raise my voice. They dumped my things on the lawn like I was a stranger. Now they want me to help pay for the house they kicked me out of. I'm not here to argue the ethics, Michael said, his voice steady. I'm just calling to inform you of the filing. You'll be receiving documents shortly. I rubbed my eyes. Of course I will. Just one more thing, he added. They also mentioned that, should you refuse to cooperate, they'd be willing to go public. Local press, social media, they seem confident they could damage your reputation. That part caught me off guard. Wait, what exactly are they planning to say? He paused. They claim you abandoned them, that you've become wealthy and cold, and that they're now on the verge of losing everything, that they sacrificed to raise you, and now their only son won't lift a finger to help them stay afloat. I felt something in my chest, like a spark trying to become a fire. They're framing me as the villain? I said. Michael didn't reply. I hung up a few seconds later, too angry to be polite. I sat there in silence, watching the lights of other office buildings flick on one by one outside my window. The city didn't care about my problems. The world kept spinning. But I wasn't going to let this happen. I pulled out the file drawer again, the one with everything. The records, the receipts, the emails I'd saved over the years. I even had a copy of the text my dad sent me when he told me to stop pretending to be a victim, the year I was hospitalized for exhaustion and couldn't make it home for the holidays. I'd buried all of it, for years, out of some misguided sense of maturity, out of a belief that walking away quietly was the high road. But now they wanted to paint me as the monster? Fine. If they wanted a fight, they were going to get one. I called my lawyer. Her name was Sasha, and she didn't ask a lot of questions. Just told me to come in first thing Monday morning. She'd handled worse, and she didn't like bullies. That weekend, I didn't go to the dinner. Didn't see the movie. I sat in my apartment, going through everything I had, building a case I never thought I'd have to use. Every missed birthday, every unacknowledged milestone, every time they chose my brother over me, not because he needed them more, but because he was easier, more obedient, less of a threat to their fragile egos. I remembered something else, too. Something small, something almost stupid. When I was 12, I made a wooden box in shop class. I gave it to my mom for Mother's Day. She opened it, smiled politely, then gave it to my aunt as a re-gift the next week. I only knew because my aunt told me how much she loved it, and I saw the little, to mom, sticker still stuck inside. They'd always seen me as disposable. And now? Now they were about to find out how dangerous someone becomes when they've got nothing left to lose, and everything to prove. But just as I was preparing to go nuclear, something happened that changed everything. I got another call. Only this time, it wasn't from a lawyer. It was from my brother. And he said something I never expected to hear. Adam, they're lying to you. You need to see what they've really done. I hadn't heard my brother's voice in almost 4 years. The last time we spoke, he called me selfish for not coming to Dad's 60th birthday, completely ignoring the fact that I was working back-to-back shifts that weekend just to stay afloat. So when his name lit up on my phone, I hesitated. I almost didn't answer. But something in my gut told me to pick up. His voice was quiet, uneasy, not the cocky, overconfident tone I remembered from our childhood, when he was always the golden boy, the one our parents called a natural, even though I was the one bringing home straight A's. Adam, he said, they're lying to you. You need to see what they've really done. I didn't speak right away. I wasn't sure what game he was playing, or if this was just another way to manipulate me. But then he said something that made my blood run cold. They've been cashing checks. In your name. I sat up straighter. What checks? Federal relief checks. From your scholarship fund. Tax refunds from your early jobs. Even something about a grant that was supposed to go to low-income students. I think they faked the paperwork. My heart was pounding. How do you know all this? I found the documents, he said. I'm not living at home anymore. I moved out last month. Couldn't take it anymore. But I came by to pick up some boxes, and I found a folder in Dad's desk. It has your name all over it. Letters, fake signatures, even a forged form with your social security number. They've been using your identity for years. I stared at the wall, jaw clenched. Of course they did. They didn't just abandon me. They didn't just humiliate me. They used me, milked me for every dollar they could get their hands on, even after I was gone. And then they had the audacity to come to my office, look me in the eyes, and ask for help like they were the victims. My brother kept talking. I'm sorry, Adam. I didn't know. I should have said something earlier. I thought you were doing fine. I figured you didn't care. I wanted to be angry with him. And maybe part of me was. But right then, I needed answers more than I needed apologies. Can you get me copies of the documents? I already did. I scanned them before I left. I can send them to you tonight. Good. We hung up, and I just sat there in my apartment, staring at nothing, letting it all sink in. They had committed federal fraud. In my name. Probably thought I'd never find out. Probably figured I was too busy climbing the ladder, too focused on success to look back. And to be honest, for a while, I was. But not anymore. That night, I forwarded the scans to Sasha. I could practically feel the shift in her tone when she called the next morning. "Oh, they're done," she said matter of fact. "This is prison time if we want to push it. At the very least, we'll get them investigated by the IRS. I want them held accountable," I said. "Every lie, every stolen dollar." "Then buckle up," she said. "Because this is going to get ugly." And it did. The next 6 months were a blur of court documents, depositions, and carefully worded emails. Sasha was relentless. We subpoenaed bank records, tax filings, even school documents from my old high school. Turns out, the fraud went further back than we thought. They'd been skimming from me since I was 17. When the federal investigators got involved, things really started to unravel. My parents were caught completely off guard. They tried to play innocent, of course, said it was all a misunderstanding, that they thought they were entitled to the money because they'd supported me growing up. But the paper trail didn't lie. Forged signatures, multiple accounts in my name. My father had even created a fake Gmail account pretending to be me to apply for certain benefits. They were charged with identity theft, wire fraud, and tax evasion. The court gave them a choice: take a plea deal and pay restitution, or go to trial and risk serious prison time. They took the deal, barely. My father got 2 years of house arrest and probation. My mother got community service and was barred from handling any financial accounts outside her own name for 5 years. They were both slapped with hefty fines. But the real blow wasn't the legal punishment. It was the humiliation. They lost the house. My childhood home, the one they kicked me out of, was sold to cover part of the restitution. Every neighbor, every distant cousin, every member of their social circle knew what happened. Their reputation, their carefully curated image of being a good old-fashioned family, was shattered. My brother moved out for good, changed his number, started over. We talk now, not all the time, but enough. He's not perfect, but he helped me when it mattered. That counts for something. As for me, I used part of the restitution to pay off my student loans, bought a better apartment, set up a scholarship fund in my name, a real one, for students like me who were told they weren't special. And I kept the photo, the one of my stuff on the lawn. It sits in a frame on the shelf behind my desk, not out of bitterness, but as a reminder of who I was, of how far I came, of what happens when you bet against someone who refuses to stay down. A few months after the case ended, I got one last letter from my parents. No return address. Handwritten. My mom's handwriting. It said, "We didn't mean for it to go that far. We just wanted what was fair." I didn't reply, because in the end, I did what they always told me to do. I figured it out. On my own.